All right, good evening. This is the first in our Parent University series for the year. We're just wanting to do a quick sort of explanation of school safety for the district. I have with me Dr. Robin Millen, our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and Officer Bill Massey, who is the School Resource Officer for Chatham. We also have School Resource Officer Tom Clark for Harwich. So let's go on to the first slide, shall we? So just things that I want to spend some time going over. We start every school year with a series of drills, just trying to both have the students understand what to do if we have a building evacuation, but also a refresher for the staff, for the teachers, for the administrators, and also having us work collaboratively with public safety on these. So we do building evacuations like you'd have your classic fire drills, and we also have something we call a run, hide, fight drill, and I'll explain that a little bit later. At the end of the day, the key thing is just to make sure that we're keeping children safe and our staff safe. So just in terms of the safety preparations that the district has, we have something that's known as a crisis team that's comprised of administrators, public safety from both towns, a number of staff, including some counselors, and we meet regularly to discuss all things regarding safety. Ways that we can make our schools safer, both in terms of physical safety, social emotional safety, but we also will look at events that are happening beyond our school district and debrief those and say, okay, what lessons can we learn from what happened elsewhere? And anytime something happens here locally, we go and spend time debriefing it to say what went well, what could we do better, and how can we learn from that. So we do run the drills, as I said. We have plans for all buildings in terms of how to reunify children with parents if we have to go and fully evacuate for an extended period of time. Each of the buildings has, we have hanging in every classroom in all the buildings something that's known as an emergency preparedness manual. Even in the library here at the high school, you'll see it hanging by the door there. It's this blue manual that talks about sort of what to do in all of these different scenarios that could possibly happen. And we also have an app, it's called Crisis Go, that we use internally to allow all of our staff to communicate with administrators who can push messages back out to staff and push messages to public safety as well. And this Crisis Go app we'll talk about a little bit later as well. In terms of just logistics, all of our buildings have doors that lock from the outside. Our custodial staff go around routinely making sure that the doors are locked and that are shutting and staying closed. We have cameras at the entrances. We have cameras inside the buildings. At each of our school buildings, visitors have to get buzzed in to the buildings, and you will end up having to interact with somebody. It's not just a ring the doorbell and it buzzes, but they're going to be asking you who you are and why you're there. We have school resource officers both in Harwich and in Chatham. As I said, Officer Massey, or Sergeant Massey, is our Chatham school resource officer and spends a period of time at Chatham Elementary School and at the middle school each day, same in Harwich. We have the fire departments go through our buildings every year, making sure that we're up to stuff when it comes to all sorts of fire codes, and we regularly practice drills. As I said, the crisis team is a group that meets regularly throughout the year to go, really process our protocols and to make sure that we're constantly learning and improving. Next slide, Joy. And as I said, the school resource officers, one of the things I'm really proud about our school resource officers is just how involved they are within our school and our communities. Our school resource officers, have had children in the district. They're involved. They are. After a while, they are a person that students look to as a trusted adult who they can go to if there's a problem. Bill, what are some of the things that you do extracurricular with students?
So every other day I have a seminar at the middle school, Junior Justice Academy, where we talk about basics of criminal justice. And we used to do a mock trial. That's been a little bit tough since COVID, but I hope to get back to that hopefully next semester, where we actually bring the kids to the courthouse and put on a trial. We do a lot of after-school things. Friday is our middle school beach party, so be sure you come there hungry to be able to feed everybody. And just being present in the school, I think, is probably the number one. So when I, get noticed outside of work at the store or in the mall, usually I get, hey, there's Officer Massey, or hey, that's the guy that comes to my school. It's very rewarding, and I look forward to meeting new students each year and seeing the development and the growth in other students. And having kids in the district, it certainly makes it easier to know a lot of the kids, because they are friends with, my kids and by extension, everybody. So Tommy and I work very closely to be in the schools, not just during the school day, because we know that the kids' day is not just comprised of the 6 or 6.5 hours that they're in school, that their day is a lot more than that, and their school day can be affected by things that happen outside of school. So having a good relationship with the kids helps create a safe and harmonious environment for everyone.
And then at Harwich Elementary and the high school here, we have Officer Tom Clark with the Harwich Police, and then Tommy has been involved in coaching in the community. Tom also has the most important animal in the district, Fritz, the police dog, who's a German short-haired pointer, and Fritz has been trained to smell vape pens and marijuana products, and but is like every student in the district's favorite animal. So it's just to see the kids react to Fritz and just how well he interacts with them. But as I said, we have very involved school resource officers. They aren't just a police officer in the building. They're far more than that. In terms of building evacuations, we have fire drills that we do. We have our first fire drill within the first week of school in each of the buildings. There's a route that's posted in that emergency preparedness manual that's hanging in each of the rooms that says, okay, this classroom should be exiting the building this way. We also train our teachers and our students to be flexible during these drills, and during some of the drills as the year goes on, we'll block a stairwell, and say danger here, just to have our students and our staff learn to be flexible, because as we all know, if a crisis happens, it doesn't always go by the playbook, and you have to be able to think on your feet and say, okay, what's my next best route out of the building? As I mentioned before, we have a Crisis Go app for communication. So after staff are out of the building with their students, they can use this app to take attendance and transmit that to the building administrator, so that we know, who's with our teachers, or if somebody needs the nurses' help while they're out during the drill, that can get communicated with this app. And we have backup plans, because during a fire drill, or some building evacuation. Sometimes Mother Nature isn't, providing us bright and sunny days. I can remember long, long ago, it's probably now 29 years ago when I was teaching off Cape, and there was smoke in a building, and everybody had to go out, and it was a virtual monsoon, and at least in that high school, there weren't plans on where to put everybody, and we were out until everybody was, I think, soaked to the bone. We have contingency plans set up at each one of our schools that, if the weather's bad, where are we going to get our students and staff into shelter while the evacuation is happening. So I want to spend a few moments talking about a slide that I think for a lot of folks can be scary, and that's the scenario run, hide, fight. And I'll preface this with this comment. When I first went into teaching, again, 30 years ago, there weren't sort of lockdown drills that we did 30 years ago. And then as I went into administration, there was the concept was lockdown, and if you'd hear the announcement or the alarm to lockdown, you were supposed to barricade your door. And into my administrative career, I went to a training with some police officers outside of Boston, and one of the police officers was talking about that we really needed to start rethinking our approach, and they were really debriefing a lot of the tragedies that have happened, and talked about that that we have options that we can do. We can train everybody in the building to be sheep, was the words that they used, or we can train and teach people how to be shepherds and sheepdogs. And I just remember remember him saying, it's like, we have to just acknowledge that unfortunately there are wolves in the world, and that there are times where we need to be prepared. And so I was chatting with Bill, even yesterday, and I said it saddens me that we have a slide like this and that we're talking about this, but the reality of life or the society that we're in at the moment is that run, hide, fight needs to be thought of on some level as a life skill. And even this past year, one of our graduates, who I handed a diploma to this past year, went off to the University of North Carolina. Their first weeks of class at the University of North Carolina, they had to go use the skill that we had been teaching and decide what's the best option at this moment when something terrible was happening at the university. I also want to emphasize that we definitely approach this from a developmentally appropriate lens. So run, hide, fight looks very, very different when we're talking about it with elementary schools and elementary age kids, and at middle school and at high school. You're more explicit about what the drill is and why you're doing it. But generally, what happens is if an alarm goes off, and remember when I said the crisis go app, every one of our staff members is empowered to activate and initiate an alarm. And if that alarm goes off, we are training our staff, we're training our students that if it's safe, get away from the danger. Again, a life skill. If it's safe, get away from the danger. And then it's like, only if it's not safe to get out do you hide, do you go into that sort of lockdown sort of approach. And the if and only if. you have to have an intruder that's into your space, do you have to think about, okay, what do I do now? But again, I'll just kind of leave it there, but but it is one of these things that even as my, over the years of my 30-year career, just how much it's shifted, and I do think that we are, when I say we're a run, hide, fight district, it's not, it's something that we ease the children into, but the staff are trained to go help them exit to safety if that's the best course. As I said, we take the attendance with the Crisis Go app. We have plans for every building on how to get children back to their parents. And we've had a couple times over the years where where an event happened at the middle school and we bust everybody over to Harwich, and it's surprising how fast families were able to go and get the emails and phone calls saying, come pick up your children, and just how grateful the families were that within 20 minutes, an entire middle school's worth of children were back in cars with their parents. But they had to get from Chatham to Harwich. And we do have plans at each one of our buildings that if there's an event, we're going to take them away from that building to reunify. And if you think about it, if there's, let's say, a fire at a building, we don't want the parents going to where public safety are rolling in. We want to go and get that massive traffic, because when the phone calls go out to the parents quickly get in the cars, understandably. I'd be jumping in my car too. But we want to make sure that traffic is away from where the emergency responders need to be. So the emphasis on this slide is, these days with social media, something get posted out there really quickly. I think as parents, our natural default is, I'm going to jump in my car, I'm heading to school. That's not necessarily going to be helpful at all, because that's potentially going to get in the way of public safety, and we'll be rolling buses to get your children away from all of that to reunite elsewhere. But you will get emails, text messages, robocalls. They'll be posted on social media, so it'll all be out there on where that reunification happens. And we have a whole team set up that are working on the communications while other administrators are working with public safety on what that crisis is in the moment. So it's all going out to you in real time, quite quickly. I've talked a bit about the Crisis Go app. As I said, it's all of our teachers have it on their computers, they have it on their phones. They're able to initiate a crisis, or initiate initiate an alarm if there's a fire or intruder or anything. They can use it to say, my student Sam went to the bathroom and he's with this other class, or this student came with us, so we're able to use this to go and account for the children, and we can use that then to help with us in that reunification effort, ultimately with parents. So, in terms of back to school activities, each of our buildings at this point in the year have already had that first fire drill. We will, in each one of the buildings next week, have a run, hide, fight drill. Again, at elementary level, they talk about it, and what it looks like is, it's very different than at the high school, but in all the buildings, everybody will leave. They'll get, far away to their reunification places that are designated each one of the buildings, and then, be brought back into the building. Just in terms of some last sort of safety things to keep in mind. At the end of the day, if we want to go and keep everybody as safe as possible. It's like that whole see something, say something, hear something, say something. At the end of the day, like we really rely on parents. If your children are saying something and they have a concern, to let somebody here, let an administrator or counselor know, so we can go and help your child or your child's friend or whomever. And the same thing, encourage your children, if they see something, to say something. Turn to a trusted adult so that we can make things better. And it's often after you hear about some tragedy where it's like, well, somebody heard or somebody knew in advance. So the more we can encourage our children to kind of be open, turn to trusted adults like Mr. Massey, Dr. Millen, principal, counselor, a teacher, a coach, we can go and get the supports that the child might need. And then, there are a lot of things when it comes to school safety that go beyond just physical safety in the learning environment. We have in each one of the buildings, something that's called student assistance teams. So, so we have administrators, counselors, nurses who take concerns that are brought to the team and process what sort of supports do we need, can we provide to children. And those reports might come from parents themselves, they might come from the student, they might come from teachers, and they might come from the child's peers. So we use this, it's called a multi-tiered system of support that looks at different levels of supports that we can provide based on what level that child might need to go and get what they need to succeed both educationally but also social emotionally here. We have these cards on the tables that you can take with you, but they put together a youth resource card that has just phone numbers that would be useful for students or families that that are in crisis. Everything from how to reach the emergency services in the towns, to family resource centers, to behavioral supports, and supports for those who have found themselves homeless. So the cards on each one of the tables, and I encourage you to take one. And also we have available through the school district behavioral health services. There's a sort of a free line that's available in Massachusetts. We also, as a school district, are part of the Care Solace thing, so there are some online counseling services that are available to all that you can use, again, to anything we can do to go and support students' mental, social, emotional health is important too. So I'll stop there. I know I've been talking a lot and just want to open things to questions. I was a teacher, so I'm really good with the wait time.
When I moved here, I was in shock thinking about security. And my worries is about around the school. Because I think the building is fine, but what about around?
In terms of the school grounds, what grade level are?
About crime, for example.
What was that again? Sorry.
Crime.
Oh, crime.
Well, I can speak to that. We're very fortunate that we don't live in a high crime area. That doesn't mean that crime doesn't exist, but we are a very proactive set of police departments. And I will tell you that the staff in all of our buildings is very attentive to people that don't belong on school property during school time. As an example, at Chatham Elementary School, it's behind the fire station, but between the fire station and, the school is between the fire station and the neighborhood. In that neighborhood are several people who walk their dogs. One of those dogs got loose one day during the school day, and the owner of the dog was frantically scouring the school property looking for their dog. And not one, not two, but 3 staff members who saw this person notified the office, who notified the police department, and we investigated. Found it was, a neighbor looking for a dog, which is fine, but the intent was there, the thought was there to be aware of, hey, that person doesn't belong on school property during the school day. So there's a lot of attention paid, there's a lot of that situational awareness among the staff, and I think that that's very common at all of our school buildings. So to that, I would say that we are very fortunate that we have such attentive staff members, and also family members that spend time at the school, coming and going, dropping things off. We get to know who they are. That's the beauty of being in a relatively small school district, and knowing a lot of the families from having siblings, you see the same parents quite often. So my kids all went through Chatham Elementary School, and they are now continuing, and I'm very happy that they're here. I'm not saying that just because I work in the schools, but it's very collaborative and very good working relationships.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have an experience I want to share. One day I was taking a friend to Boston. She, at school, a child from another school district called and said, I want to come. And she said, just act like my mom and call the school. And she did that. The child came out. So I go on my phone now, and I called my friend and said, call to let out my child. And then immediately after that, the school called me and said, Mr. Morrison, I just received a call from you stating that Bonnie is supposed to be dismissed. So I know that Outreach, at the time it was Outreach High School. So I know we have a good security system in the Monomoy district in regards to letting the kid out, because the thing I know about our district is that, to me, the person that answers the phone know even the parent's voice. Yeah.
Thank you.
For active shooter and things of that nature, what resources do you have in the school for bleed prevention, stuff like that? Have you guys done Stop the Bleed? Do you have any trauma kits that are inside the school? Or are you expecting all that resource to come from the first responders?
I believe our nurses have the kits, and clearly the first responders are coming with it. And again, I think just in terms of things that we're also blessed with in the community is each one of our schools is very close to where those first responders are rolling from, and the response time when and if we need somebody here for anything is literally just a couple minutes, and the first vehicles on site.
How many of those kids, so are any of the staff other than the nurse trained in Stop the Bleed? And how many of those kids do you have? Only because I appreciate what you're saying. And Bill knows me, everybody knows me.
Right.
The problem is that they can be as close as they can be, but if you're pinned down in a location, it doesn't matter if they're 2 minutes away or 1 minute away, you're not getting the resources into the school in order to do some of this stuff. So coming from where, and this is in no way a criticism, I'm just saying this is another 1,000-foot view, if you will, where
Right.
having those things in strategically placed around the school so that they can be distributed if need be would be huge.
Yeah.
And that Stop the Bleed program is geared towards lay people with no extra training required, and would do wonders if you ever had anybody that was in a position where they were pinned down and you couldn't get resources to them.
I think, Rich, it's a good point. I
So,
think, Bill.
so the short answer to that is, yes, there are some people in the school district that have gone through the Stop and Bleed training. Yes, there are some kids in the building. Could we use more? Yes, of course. We can always use more. That topic has been discussed at our crisis team meetings as far as how to make that happen and how to increase the number of people that have that training. And yes, so that's in progress. But like I said, we can always use more of those in different locations throughout the building, not just the nurse's office, because, you know,
It's a big school.
Yeah, I think it's a good point that you.
Every school is a big school, yes.
It's a good point that you bring up, Rich, and I think it's something we can put on our next crisis team agenda, to kind of think even more broadly about it.
And one other question, when you guys do your active shooter drills, do you involve the teachers? Like when if you do like a TEC or any of that stuff like you did the elementary school a while back, do you bring in players?
So, we have done some role playing, and we have included some staff members in the past. COVID kind of kicked things out from under us a little bit. We had a very good momentum going. Since we're now out of that, well, I shouldn't say out of it, since we're now a little bit more aware of what that looks like, I see that as coming back and doing a lot more. We've got 4 police and fire departments, the 2 Chatham departments and the 2 Harwich departments, who are eager to work together and do so very well. So, yes, that will, I'm sure.
From personal experience, we've run a giant active shooter drill at the airport, and if the more people that are involved in it, that potentially can be involved in it, it's an eye-opening experience, especially when you involve in how it would actually play out. It's eye-opening to see how it all goes down. And it's a good thing. I mean, it's 100% a good thing because it gets you that. And again, I think I hate to keep back beating a dead horse, but one of the biggest fears I have, knowing what I know, is just that. So fire, I'm okay with. Flood, inundation, locust, those are all easy things. But that threat is one of the biggest concerns. So.
And I think, and I understand, and that's why I think we have been on our end, doing what we can to make sure that, that every single individual in here is empowered to start that response, not wait for a phone call to get up to the front office, but it can happen, right away. And and again, just working with police and fire to make sure that we're doing everything we can to go and train our staff and our students to get away from danger.
And to Rick's point, first responders is a little bit misleading sometimes, because if you're in the supermarket and something happens, you're not the first responder to help somebody, or you, anybody. So I think that term kind of got assigned to us, which I'm fine with, but in reality, as you pointed out, we're talking about a life skill now, because places of worship, supermarkets, movie theaters have all had incidents.
Yeah, I know. I think Bill and I were at a public presentation at the Chatham Orpheum a few years back, and and there was a lot of focus on first responders, and I just sort of shared at the very end of it. I said, the reality is I greatly appreciate everything that police and fire are doing, but oftentimes the first responders, the very first responders are, Dr. Millen and I and others, our teachers, custodial staff, it's like we're training our staff to be, in many ways, the first ones that are dealing with whatever the scenario is.
So I'm not a fan of the run, hide, fight, but I'm a firm believer through experience with my own family. So I've taught my children way before Monomoy introduced it, this is what you do. But because I cry every time we talk about this, I cry. But I empower my children because I have elementary school children up to high school children. I want to empower my boys and my boy and my girl who are in elementary school to fight. That is their job. They have to fight. This is their this is their life. They have to save the life of their friends, of themselves. But I also, because of my family, have an experience, understand the percentage of school shootings that actually occur. And so I explain to my children, this is the probability. So, which isn't great, but we could be that one. So during these drills, so we don't instill fear, but we instill, what is the word I'm looking for? Do you explain to the children in lay terms the probability that they're facing, but yet encourage them in the same token, right? Because I don't want them to be afraid to come to school. That we had the incident with the high school, last year or whatever, the bomb threat that happened. My elementary school children were terrified, but we sat down and we explained the probability of this. This is what happens.
Right.
So how do we do this with kids? Empower them, but let them know that percentage-wise.
I mean, I think if you look statistically at it, the safest place children can be, period, are in schools.
I know, and that's what I want them to know.
It's safer than when they're out playing in the backyard.
That's right. Or in the car,
That's the statistical probability, despite some really sad things that have happened. Have happened in the news. And I think that life skill is trying to make sure that we're training everybody to be flexible thinkers in a crisis. Don't just I'm only going to do this. It's be flexible.
But do we teach them that? Are you instilling in them during these drills that you need to be empowered to hide, fight, or do all these things, but not create fear at the same time?
I think
is that part of the?
I think I would actually say yes, and I welcome parents to chime in. I'll speak for myself, having now.
I know big kids.
Now kids that are 19 and 21, but having had them come up through this school, this school system, and it's been interesting to hear my own children over the years as they're processing the drills that they're in. I think in elementary school, in many ways, they had no idea that it was run, hide, fight. They knew that they were evacuating the building with their teacher as quiet as they possibly could and as quickly as they possibly could. And like my son, I remember him coming home from school this day, he's like, I'm not supposed to tell you where we're going, but this is where we went. And it's like, and I think, I know I've heard, people in public safety talk about, because they will oftentimes at the elementary level, it'll be a police officer, a firefighter that will work individually with the class. And without talking run, hide, fight, sort of talk about getting away and out of sight, with your group. And again, very age developmentally appropriate. By the time you get to high school, our high schoolers understand what they've seen in the news over the years, and it's, you know, it's, again, more clear in terms of what the drill is and why.
And if I could add, I mean, I was the elementary principal here for years before I came into this new position. I work closely with the police department. We also often train students not just for run, hide, fight, for active shooter or other things. There's lots of dangers out there. We happen to have a loose bird thing that was causing a lot of havoc in the hallway, and you know, getting the children out of the hallway, they knew that they needed to get to safety so the bird wouldn't harm them in that way. So it's a developmentally appropriate way, but also real life, again, skills that just might happen in a day. There could be a skunk, there could be, we used to talk about a bear, coyotes, tornadoes, those type of things. The other thing we really are very, very careful not to do is to create stereotypes, like saying it's a bad guy or a bad, you know, like that kind of stereotype that could imprint a child from thinking all bad people are just gentlemen, you know, or men, or whatever it might be. So some of those stereotypes in life that we tend to go to sometimes as parents, you know, and, you know, well, that's a bad person. Well, what does that mean? Are all bad people? Are all people bad? So we're very careful with the way that we word things and the way that we make sure that children know that they are empowered to make safety decisions for themselves, but they could be lots of different things. So they're not afraid at that time that they can make those rational decisions, even at very small ages. I mean, the safety officers were going through and say, where would you go if, you know, there was a skunk in the hallway? And, you know, kids have all these different ideas. They're very good about knowing what they need to do and that type of thing.
Yeah, especially at the younger grades. Typically what we do is we'll send a police officer and a firefighter, people that the kids know, that they see often, with their classroom teacher, and have the discussion about the evacuation. We don't generally discuss the why of it. We talk about the how, because as Dr. Miller pointed out, it could be any situation that makes their classroom or the building no longer safe. And whatever that is, doesn't matter. It just matters that we need to follow the instructions of the teacher and get out as we've practiced. As we move further on into the ages, middle school and certainly in high school, there's a lot of knowledge about why it is that we need to do this, and it's generally a lot of those conversations, Tom, I think are student-led, and they talk about what their experience is or what their perception is of how it's supposed to work, and they recognize that it's something that is part of our society now, unfortunately. So it's definitely developmentally and age appropriate with the classroom teacher and a firefighter and a police officer that the kids know and see fairly frequently. So there's familiarity there, there's inherent trust, and as Dr. Miller pointed out, we avoid those words of bad guy. I think, you know, Tom and I probably both get the question a lot, you know, how many bad guys have you arrested? And the answer that I give, which I heard from the school officer that I knew when I was in school, was, well, I don't arrest bad guys. You know, sometimes I have to arrest good people who make bad decisions. And either it works or it doesn't work, but that's generally the message that we send.
Since his name came up a lot tonight, this is Officer Tom Clark, the Harwich SRO for this building in Harwich Elementary School.
We heard about Fritz.
Yes.
Start the show, right?
Always.
Any other questions? Well, I thank you for coming out. I'll stay after and happy to talk with anybody individually if you'd like, and I welcome you to come to our next Parent University series.
And please do take the handouts on the table. Some of them are informational sheets, the resource card that Dr. Parker mentioned, and a sticker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.